Welcome back. We're taking a look at exercise 12-1 from Murach's PHP and MySQL. And in this exercise, we're going to be modifying the shopping cart application. We'll be changing the lifetime of our session cookie and seeing how that affects how our application works. So jumping into it, in step 1, we're supposed to run the application from the xstarts chapter 12 exercise 1 directory. So here's our application up and running. Step 2 is test this application by adding items into the cart. So I'll add some items into our cart here. 1 flute, 2 trumpets, and 3 clarinets. So great, we've got our items in our cart. It says exit our browser, restart it, and view the cart. So over here on the right side I'm using Chrome, over on the left side Firefox, so I can quit Chrome without losing my code. And when I start it back up, we'll bring up our application again and view our cart, and we still have our items inside the cart. And as it describes in step 2, we still have items in our cart because we're using a persistent session cookie. Okay, step 3, open the index.php for this application and review the code. So here's the index.php on the left side. And in here we can see this code is configuring the session for a 2-week persistent cookie. So we get our lifetime of 2 weeks, and we set that into our session cookie parameters. And that's why our cookie is still good after we close and open the browser. Okay, moving on to step 4. We're going to modify the code so it uses a session cookie instead of a persistent cookie. So to do that, we just set our lifetime equal to 0, which means the cookie that identifies our PHP session will only last as long as the browser is open. And we can see that using our developer tools, so I'm going to go ahead and open these up. We've got a resources tab, and we've got a cookies item here in the left menu. And when we pick our domain, we can see we've got a PHP session ID cookie. That's the one that identifies our session. Since I haven't reloaded the page yet, I've still got the 2-week persistent cookie in here. Once I delete this cookie, that means my cart will be empty, and PHP will have to start a new session for me when I reload the page. We'll see that it gets a new expiration. So I'll go ahead and do that. We'll go back to our first page. So now I have a new PHP session ID cookie with a new identifier, and you can see the expiration is now set to session. Okay, so our code is working for the lifetime change. We'll also, for step 5, we'll want to test this change. To do that, we'll add some items to our cart again. This time 3 trumpets and 1 clarinet. Okay, so we've got 3 trumpets and 1 clarinet. I'll go ahead and quit the browser. Open it up again. I've got our exercise, and when I go back to view the cart is empty because the cookie for the session only lasted as long as the browser was still active, still open. And it describes that in step 5 for us. Okay, so that's how the session cookie that lasts only for the browser session would work. All right, moving on to step 6. Go ahead and comment this one out. Step 6 tells us to modify the code so it uses a session that lasts for 3 years. I didn't mean to cut that. I'm going to borrow this code. And instead of 2 weeks, we're going to make this 3 years. So we've got 365 days by 3 for 3 years. Update our comment, 3 years in seconds. So one of the common questions I get is, why do we write it out like this instead of multiplying it and putting the number in? So let me bring up calculator and see what this would actually be. I think I calculated this already, but here we go. 60 times 60 times 24 times 365 times 3. There's our value. So I could do something like this. I could say lifetime equals this, instead of writing it all out. The reason we've written it out 60 times 60 times 24 is that's a little easier to come back in and understand what's going on. If I just left this a big, huge number, someone coming back in would look at that and they'd have to say, I don't know how long that lasts. So they'd have to do the math and divide it into seconds, and then hours, and then try to figure out how long that is. Whereas if we write it multiplied out like this, it's a little easier to see 60 seconds times 60 minutes times 24 hours times 365 days times 3, that's 3 years. We can do the same thing if we look over the 2 weeks. 60 seconds times 60 minutes times 24 hours times 14 days is 2 weeks. So that's why we write it out the long way instead of actually multiplying it. Okay, so that's good for step 6. Step 7 is add code that displays the session ID on both pages of the application. So we want to go ahead and add the code in here to our cart view and to our add item view. I'm going to do it down at the bottom of the page. Just add another paragraph that echoes out our session ID, like that. I'll copy this line and add it to our add item view as well. Okay. And it says test these changes. Now again, I'm going to have to go in here, developer tools, yes, developer tools, back to our cookies. Since I already have my existing session cookie from testing this out before, I'm going to delete that one so I get a new cookie. Now when I get to our front page, I get a new session cookie. You can check the expiration on it, and yes, it is 3 years out in the future. And we are printing out the session ID down at the bottom of the page. You can see it's the same session ID that's actually stored inside the cookie. And if we go to our view cart page, we should see that same string there, and it does match. Okay, it says on step 8, the session ID should remain the same even if you exit and restart the browser. So to test that out, I'm going to exit this and restart it. I'm just going to copy this temporarily here into our add item view so we can make sure it's the same ID. Okay, so I'll quit Chrome, reopen Chrome, go back to exercise 2-1. We'll see it here twice because I had copied and pasted it. But yes, our session ID does match what it was before, after we close and open the browser. Okay, so I'll take that back out so our page looks pretty again. And that's good for step 8. Now for step 9, add a link to the cart page, so that's the view cart page, that says end session and delete cookie. Okay, so that's our cart view. We'll go ahead and add a link that says that. And session and delete cookie. Okay, we'll give that an action of end session. Okay. Let me read through what else step 9 has. Okay, then we'll need to add the code that processes this link. Before we get to that, I'm just going to make sure the link shows up correctly. There we go. And it takes us to the end session action. Okay. So then we add code to process this link by clearing all session data from memory, cleaning up the session ID, and deleting the session cookie. So that's going to happen in our index.php. We now need an action for, what did I call it? End session. That's a logical name inside our index. Okay, and it wants us to do a couple things here. It wants us to first clear all session data from memory. So to do that, All we need to do is clear out our session array. And a common way to do that is to set the session variable to a new array. Okay, so that's part one. It wants us also to clean up the session ID. Okay, that's pretty simple. To do that, we just need to destroy the session. Session destroy. Okay, now we've got our session destroy in there to clean up the ID. And the last part it says, and delete the cookie for the session. Okay, so to do deleting the cookie, we have to basically create a new cookie that expires right away. So to do that, we'll do our name equals our session name. We'll get an expiration of str2 time -1 year. That means the expiration was definitely in the past. Okay, params equals session get cookie params. So that'll get any other params that we have. The path for our cookie is going to be params path. The domain is going to be params domain. What else do we need? We need secure equals param secure. We need HTTP only equals params HTTP only. Okay, now that we've got all of this, we want to set a cookie. Set cookie with the name, no value for it. Give it our expiration that we had, which was -1 year, a year ago. It needs a path, the domain, secure, and HTTP only. And those were all items we pulled out of the get session cookie params. Widen that out so you can see that. Okay, and the last thing we need to do is include some kind of view. So we'll go back to the cart view. Include cart view.php. Okay, great. So first thing we did, cleared out the memory, cleared out the session ID, and then we go and delete that cookie, and we go back to the cart view. Okay, just so we can see this working, I'm going to add a couple items into our cart. And this is step 10, testing the changes. So now I've got a couple of items in the cart. We can see our session ID. Go ahead and click end session and delete cookie and see what happens. So we've got, there are no items in your cart. We don't have our session ID printed out anymore because, well, we just deleted it. It doesn't exist. So let's go back to add item, and we do have a new session ID. The other one started ECE something something. Now we've got a KR8. Just to see that work again. So we've got KR8 as our session ID. When I delete the session, go to add item, now I've got an IAJ as the session. So that's great. And just to take a look at our session cookie again, for those other items that we added, here's our developer tools. Going back to our session cookie, all those other items that we added into our set cookie, you can actually see that inside our developer tools. So we have a path, here's our path. We've got a domain, here's our domain. Secure would be this column. Our cookie is not set to secure only, and it's not set to HTTP only, but these two columns would indicate that. Okay, one last thing to look at. Go to our network tab, and we can actually see how these headers are being set. Network tab, I was trying to make it a little bigger. Okay, so I'll add an item into the cart, and then I'm going to clear what we've got in our networks. And when I click end session and delete cookie, we can actually see the requests that we're sending. So I'm interested in the headers. So the request header, what we sent to the server to start with, we have a cookie in here. It had our original session ID, PHP session IAJ, etc., etc. So we had that cookie set. The response we get back from the server says we have a new cookie. Our PHP session ID is deleted. It gives us the expiration time of a long time ago, so it's actually in the past, so it's going to delete the cookie that we have, and it gives us the max age and path, the same thing that we had set before. Also to check, and it didn't create a new session cookie, it just deleted the old one that we have. So if we look at our resources, look at our cookies, we actually don't have a session cookie anymore. So that's how you can actually check what the cookies are doing, how they're being set and deleted. You can actually look at that in the network trace. Okay, so that's it for exercise 12-1.